What if hiring could be easier, more streamlined, and less time-consuming, so even when you're busy, you could still be smart about the way you hire? With ZipRecruiter, you can post your job to over 100 of the web's leading job boards with just one click, so you can rest easy knowing your job is being seen by the right candidates. Then, ZipRecruiter puts its smart matching technology to work, actively notifying qualified candidates about your job within minutes of posting so you receive the best possible matches. That's why ZipRecruiter is different. Unlike other hiring sites, ZipRecruiter doesn't depend on the right candidates finding you, it finds them. And it's no wonder 80% of employers who post on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate through the site in just one day. ZipRecruiter, it's the smartest way to hire. Find out today why ZipRecruiter has been used by growing businesses of all sizes and industries to find the most qualified job candidates with immediate results. And right now, my listeners can post jobs on ZipRecruiter for free. That is right, free. Just go to ZipRecruiter.com/M&M. That's ZipRecruiter.com/M&M. One more time to try it for free. Go to ZipRecruiter.com/M&M.
Sport Clips Haircuts Help a Hero program funds scholarships for U.S. veterans who are pursuing a college degree or vocational certification. Visit your nearest Sport Clips to learn more and donate now through November 11th.
This is the Best of Mike and Mike podcast. Subscribe now by going to the Listen tab in the ESPN app.
The Best of Mike and Mike.
Here we are. We are back and better than ever. Mike and Mike presented by Progressive Insurance. Our guests on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line, a Wednesday morning, and any number of football stories to discuss today. Rankings and suspensions and huge games on the weekend horizon. But the sadness extends across our world of sports today with the news of the death of one of the really terrific pitchers in recent years, Roy Halladay, yesterday, Mike, just 40 years old. Unbelievably sad story.
Just a horrible story. Died in a one-person plane crash. He was a big, loved flying planes. His dad, I believe, was a corporate pilot.
Correct.
So he'd been around it, and he'd done it, talked about it. You know, the things he talked about all the time, I believe, were coaching his kids and flying and talking about planes. And just such a shame in the Gulf of Mexico that the plane crashes. And 40 years old, I mean, just – so forgetting even, we'll talk obviously about the baseball side of it, the sports side of it, but it pales in comparison to, you know, a guy that young, 40 years old, just out of the game not many years ago, losing his life, doing something he absolutely loved to do, but boy, you want to talk about cut way too short and just a horrible accident.
Yeah, I saw all of these videos yesterday after he died that he had posted on YouTube of his joy for flying. He had just gotten this new plane.
Yeah, this new plane's supposed to be supposed to be an unbelievably safe plane. These new personalized planes out there, and just obviously a horrific ending.
Yeah, hard to know what to say.
Yeah,
I can run through a variety of numbers for you here. Certainly the most famous game, he pitched a perfect game in the regular season. The most famous game he pitched, though, was that he pitched a no-hitter in the playoffs. And there had only been one of those previously, of course, as everybody will legendarily remember, and that's Don Larson. And so then the second one came from Halladay. And I remember watching that game, as I know you do, too. We came in here the next day. And it was one of the great one of the great performances you've ever seen of any kind. And he was a dominant player, a dominant pitcher, a very well-respected, pitched in Toronto all those years, won a Cy Young, went to Philly when they got really good and put together that staff, and he was the centerpiece of it. And there was all this talk about him moving around. And so we could sit here and talk about his baseball career all that we want. We did not know him personally, but I was struck by particularly from Cole Hamels, who was a teammate and a close friend, but from so many across the world of baseball. I saw Dan Harron's Twitter feed yesterday. It was very emotional. People who knew him really loved him.
I mean, he was a guy respected amongst the respected.
Yeah.
You know, that's kind of the feeling everybody had for him, and a guy who pitched in a way. You know, I was talking a lot with Hembo before the show, and a guy you're not going to see that type of pitcher anymore in the game. You know, with 67 complete games. There was a 5-season stretch where he had 42 complete games, which was more than all but 3 teams in the league. I mean, this guy got the ball, and he didn't want to give up the ball, and he was so well respected for the way he approached the game and his work ethic. And so, again, we can talk about the baseball numbers and how respected he was. seemed to be he's up for the Hall of Fame in 2019, seemed to be kind of a bubble fringe kind of a Hall of Fame guy with the numbers that were up there. So that's all obviously going on down the line. So that's really all we know of him is his baseball prowess of what he did on the field and how well he did it. But as you saw yesterday, people coming out and talking about how well respected of a person he was for his work ethic and the type of person that he was. But this is just a horrible, horrible thing for the family to have to obviously go through. It's just, again, you don't know what to say, in a situation like this.
Brandon McCarthy described him as your favorite player's favorite player. We didn't know him, but Tim Kurkjian did. Here are some thoughts from Tim Kurkjian on Roy Halladay.
I'll remember him as a great pitcher and a future Hall of Famer, and I'll remember him as one of the hardest working players I've ever been around. 10 years ago, I walked into the Blue Jays clubhouse 3.5 hours before a game. Greg Zahn, one of the catchers, was in there, and I asked where Roy Halladay was, and he said, he's over there, he said. Zahn said, I got here at 1:30 in the afternoon, and he was in a pool of sweat when I got here. That's how hard Halladay always worked, and that hard work got him 203 wins and a .659 winning percentage. He won 2 Cy Youngs, and in 2010, he threw a perfect game, and then in the postseason, he threw a no-hitter, joining Don Larson as the only 2 pitchers ever to throw a no-hitter or a perfect game in the postseason. And after that 2010 season, he had a replica Cy Young Award made for his catcher, Carlos Ruiz. And that's who Roy Halladay is, a great pitcher and an even better teammate.
That when I heard that story, that's why I really wanted to play that. We hear stories about quarterbacks buying their lineman things and all that kind of stuff. And he had a little replica Cy Young made for his catcher. So it just sounds like from everything you heard, he just sounds like he was a terrific person.
Exactly.
And look, what can you say? I mean, man's 40 years old with little kids, and just absolutely tragic.
It is horrid, and that's all we really know about is the baseball side of it until you hear others telling stories like that story and like others that will be out there of the type of person that he is, and just it adds to just how tragic the loss is.
All right, we will share more stories of him from others as we go on here through this morning. In the meantime, a lot of other things to get to in the world of sports. So let's do that. We'll jump in with Off the Top, Mike, and it starts with an interesting showdown last night. Cavs and the Bucks. It's LeBron James against Giannis Antetokounmpo, and they did not disappoint.
No, they did not. It was the Cavaliers who got a much-needed win, but it was Antetokounmpo. He scored 40 points, his second 40-point game of the season, tied with Kareem Abdul-Jabbar for the most through the first 10 games of the season in Bucks history. But let's look at the quick comparison of LeBron James now has played the exact same amount of games as Michael Jordan. LeBron has 716 wins. Jordan has 706. But here's the interesting number to me on how comparable these guys are. Add up their total points, their rebounds, and their assists. So all of those numbers, add them up, and the difference is 145.
Is that right?
145. The total of that number for Jordan is 44,597. For James, 44,452. That's ridiculous. So 145 is points, rebounds, assists, all added up together.
Yeah.
That's the only difference.
Jordan is going to be ahead in points, right? I mean,
Jordan is ahead in points, yes. Jordan, 50-point games, Jordan's had 31. LeBron's had 11. Triple-doubles, Jordan had 28. LeBron's had 56.
Yeah. I mean, Michael was a much more pure scorer.
Yeah, he was. But it is amazing how close
it is
those
a really
numbers
interesting day. I mean, I was fascinated by some of that conversation yesterday. We'll get back into it. Anyway, we mentioned the Bucks lost, but for them, help is on the way in the form of Eric Bledsoe, who will no longer be in the beauty salons in Phoenix. Yeah. He's moving to Wisconsin.
To the beauty salons of Milwaukee.
Correct.
He averaged a career high in points, did Bledsoe, points and assists last season. He also posted a highest player efficiency rating of his career. So, another point guard coming into the East to battle against the Cavaliers. As we talked about Milwaukee and their rise, Antetokounmpo and the rise of him as a player, but what's going to be around him to help that team, compete, in that conference, and certainly Bledsoe is going to help in that situation.
I'll tell you, it's a good day for the NBA, in my opinion. Milwaukee was a wasteland. It was a place that you thought maybe they would just never be able to get players. No one would want to go there. But what's changing in the NBA now is that players want to go where they can win.
Yeah.
And they see a situation where they can win. Look at Carmelo Anthony. He voluntarily went to Oklahoma City. And here's Eric Bledsoe excited to be going to Milwaukee. This is good to me for the NBA. If the Oklahoma Cities and the Milwaukees of the world have a chance to compete, that's good news for the league.
I agree. And let's see what happens in Minnesota, what they have there. Some obviously by trade and draft, but let's see if others will want to go there because of the potential to win. Quick note on Oklahoma City before you build them up too much. They haven't won in the West yet. They're 0-5.
Yeah, no, they actually have they have a worse record than the Knicks.
Yeah, they do.
The Thunder are 4-6. The Knicks are 6-4.
Off the top.
Who would have thunk it? All right, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers will play this weekend not only without Jameis Winston, but also without wide receiver Mike Evans. Mike, he lost his suspension appeal. Are you surprised?
Oh, no. I didn't think he was going. I thought he was going to get more than. Remember, there were 5 players actually kicked out of games on Sunday. Mike Evans was not one of those. None of the other 5, well, they were kicked out of that game, so they missed of whatever portion of the game was left they got kicked out of, but none of them got suspended for a game after that. Evans wasn't kicked out, but what he did, in all honesty, could have caused the most harm without coming up and just blindsiding a dude at full speed. I mean, I know that A.J. Green grabbed Ramsey around the neck, and then the punches, forget that. You're not going to punch somebody in the helmet and hurt them. What Evans did, that could have caused some damage. There's no doubt about it. So I didn't think there was any way he was going to win his appeal. What he said yesterday, he said, I want to sincerely apologize for my actions during Sunday's games. That's what he said in the statement. He said it after the game as well. He said it was childish and he shouldn't have done it. He got caught up in the moment. Now it cost him a game.
So the Buccaneers will play the Jets without Jameis Winston and without Mike Evans.
Off the top.
And finally, Georgia remains number 1 in the second release of the college football playoff rankings, and that is where we're going to spend the next few minutes here on Mike and Mike. So let's make that off the top with us, presented by Progressive Insurance. You can test drive Snapshot even if you have insurance with another company. See how much you can save before you switch. Georgia 1, Alabama 2, Notre Dame 3, Clemson 4. So the top 4, Mike, remained exactly the same. What jumped out at you, first and foremost, about last night's release?
Well, there were 2 things. One, I wanted to see where Miami was going to end up, and they went from 10 to 7, and they jumped ahead of Wisconsin. Wisconsin was 9 last week. Miami was 10. They were both undefeated. They remain undefeated. Now Miami, who beat a Virginia Tech team, a ranked Virginia Tech team, they're ranked 17th, went ahead of Wisconsin. I thought Miami might be as high as 6. I knew Oklahoma would be 5, but it's TCU. That ended up being 6. Miami 7, Wisconsin, Washington number 9, and then Auburn number 10. And the other is the incredible jump that Michigan State took. They went and they went from 24 to 12. So that was a monster jump for them. They're going, if they ride this thing out and win the rest of their games, they are going to be sick. It's going to be your school, who, by the way, jumped into the rankings at number 25, that will have cost Michigan State, because Michigan State's only loss before that one was to Notre Dame, which is sitting at number 3 now. Michigan State is playing well. They lost the overtime game to Northwestern, and that could cost them. Other than that, I know we want to talk about it, and I know there's another scenario. My son Mike and Jason Fitz do a little thing, a Periscope, and also on ESPN Radio about the rankings, and a scenario came up that was very interesting that we can talk about as well. But in all honesty, Greeny, there are 7 ranked games this week.
This week is as good as it's ever going to be.
Without question. So all the rankings you see and all the craziness that I want my team here, that my team should be there, this team shouldn't be that high, so much of it is going to be settled this weekend. It's ridiculous.
Yeah. I just, right off the top, if you just look at the top teams and where they all stand, I mean, Georgia is at Auburn.
Well, I have them all for you.
Go ahead.
I have them all.
But some of them are top 10
no, I know.
versus top 10.
That's right. Georgia 1, Auburn 10. Alabama sitting at number 2 is taking on number 16 Mississippi State. Number 3 Notre Dame takes on number 7 Miami. Number 5 Oklahoma takes on number 6 TCU. Number 12 Michigan State takes on number 13 Ohio State. I mean, it's crazy.
Wisconsin is playing Iowa, and they're ranked now.
Wisconsin is number 8, and they're playing Iowa number 20. Oklahoma State's number 15. They're playing Iowa State number 21. It's crazy. There's 7 ranked, as Greeny said, a few in the top 10 as well. So as I looked at this and I thought, Miami didn't get into the top 6. It doesn't matter. TCU did. But TCU plays Oklahoma.
Right.
So the loser of that is going to drop. In Miami, Mark Richt said it. He said it correctly. Listen, he goes, I'm fine with 7. He goes, if we win, we move up. If we lose, we go back down. I mean, it is so laid out there right now of what's going on for the fact that the 1 and 2 teams in the country, Georgia and Alabama, both still play Auburn, which is sitting at number 10. I mean, the possibilities of what could happen, if Auburn wins either one of those games is getting amazing.
Well, Auburn will have to win both of those games, but I think Auburn, if they do, would become the first ever 2-loss team to make it into the Final Four. I think a 2-loss SEC champion Auburn beating Georgia, then Alabama, then Georgia again.
Right.
Now, you want to talk about a tall task. And do I think it's going to happen? I most certainly do not.
I do not.
But if they did, I think they'd get in.
Could you imagine them doing that and getting in and Wisconsin running the table and being left out,
and
undefeated?
I mention it that way. I don't think that happens now because Wisconsin is getting a bunch of good things happen. You just mentioned Northwestern is ranked. They're playing Iowa. Iowa is now ranked. Michigan is working its way back into business. They may wind up being ranked by the time Wisconsin plays them, and they would then play a ranked team in the Big Ten championship game. Maybe it'll be Michigan State. Maybe it'll be Ohio State. They will have enough on their resume that I just cannot fathom them getting left out if they run the table unbeaten.
Hard to think, but you give me the scenario of them winning out,
Yep.
and Auburn winning out,
Yep.
and there was only one spot. Who would you put in?
But you're painting a picture of there being one spot. If Auburn gets in, that takes Georgia and Alabama both out. So that opens up a bunch of spots.
But Clemson could still be there. Oklahoma could still be there.
Yeah.
Notre Dame could still be there.
And
I'm just throwing up that scenario.
Well, so give it to me again. Auburn,
I'm saying,
a 2-loss Auburn versus an unbeaten Wisconsin.
Auburn beating Georgia, Alabama, Georgia, and then Wisconsin running the table.
Probably Auburn. I mean, if you're asking me which way I would go with Auburn because one of their losses is to Clemson. The other one, was that the game they were killing LSU and lost? Weren't they winning that game like 20-0 and LSU came all the way back and won? Am I remembering that right? That's their other loss, I know, is to LSU. But I'm almost positive they were winning that game 20-0. It doesn't matter if, for the purposes of that, I just trying to remember the game.
Right.
But the point is, if you ask me, yes, I think Auburn would do that. But I don't see that happening because Auburn getting there takes the top. We've already basically put in Alabama or Georgia or both.
Yes, we have.
Right? We've already given the SEC the possibility of 2 spots. So Auburn would only be taking 1. So I don't think that takes the Big Ten out of it by Auburn getting in there. They just replace Alabama or Georgia.
Yeah, I was just throwing that scenario.
No, it's a fun one.
That's all you can do now is throw out scenarios because I got another one for you.
Let me hear it. There's nothing. Listen, this is the beauty of the college football playoff system, by the way. There's nothing more fun than throwing out the scenarios.
Without a doubt.
Thinking them through. It's obviously a waste of time, but I enjoy it.
How many times have we kept talking about if Georgia and Alabama meet in the SEC title game and one of them loses and it's a close game of putting that one-loss team in?
Yeah, sure.
Okay?
Yeah.
How about this scenario? How about Miami beats Notre Dame? Miami gets to the ACC undefeated.
Right.
They'll be in the top 4 at that point. And then they play Clemson, and then Clemson beats them in a very close game. What about Clemson and Miami both getting in? It's the same kind
They
of.
would both have 1 loss.
Now, the difference is Clemson would have the 1 loss as well, where in the other scenario we have Georgia and Alabama both meeting undefeated, but the losing team still getting in. So what if the undefeated team lost in Miami, and now Clemson beat Miami, and now Miami just has that 1 loss to Clemson? I mean, it's just scenarios to throw out there.
Look, that would create an interesting circumstance. My gut. Well, how do I know? How do I know what would happen?
Well, listen, because we've seen everything already. We've seen head-to-head not matter at the end, and we've also seen you don't have to be a conference champ to be in, right?
Of course.
So we've seen all that. So to sit there and laugh off any scenario at this point would be foolish because you don't know. These are 13 human beings in that room who are deciding this, and we still don't have a handle really on how they're deciding everything from week to week.
It is a fascinating set of circumstances. So, again, if you're just waking up and joining us in our college football playoff rankings brought to you by the 2018 Ford F-150, it doesn't just raise the bar, it is the bar. The Ford F-150 doesn't just raise the bar, it is the bar. Georgia, Alabama, 1-2. Notre Dame, Clemson, 3-4. That hasn't changed. Oklahoma, 5. They stayed there. TCU moves up to 6. They two teams play each other this weekend.
Jeez.
7 is Miami. They play Notre Dame. 8 is Wisconsin. 9 is Washington. 10 is Auburn. The reason I leave it there, Mike, is, in my opinion, you tell me if you disagree, Does the list of teams that you could realistically see getting into the playoff end there, or do you think Michigan State still has a real chance to get in?
Well, listen, we have never seen a two-loss team get into this. So the scenario is up there about Auburn if they were to run the table, which I don't think they're going to do. But that gauntlet of Georgia, Alabama, Georgia would be unreal. So
right.
I could absolutely see them being the first two-loss team to get in. Now, I don't think that's going to happen. I do think the way Michigan State is playing, that they can run the table. Now, they're a monster underdog to Ohio State,
yes,
right?
They are.
Like
yep.
16-point underdog.
RFPI still has Ohio State the second-best team in the country. Take that for what it's worth. But here's the point. Michigan State, if they did it, their biggest wins would be Wisconsin,
right,
and whoever winds up the highest ranked out of Ohio State and Penn State.
Right.
If they do this, and again, they have to beat Ohio State this weekend to do it.
Yes, they do.
But if they do that, that would be their best wins. That's not the same thing as beating Alabama and Georgia
twice. No, it is not.
So, and listen, I will sit here and I will campaign for the Big Ten until the cows come home. That's my conference. I went to school in it, and I love it, and I will absolutely defend it. But I'd be the first person to tell you there is an enormous difference between losing to Clemson and beating Alabama and Georgia versus what Michigan State's resume would be. I don't think Michigan State gets in with
any
two
chance
losses.
if Ohio State runs it that they get in?
No way.
Not with that loss to Iowa, right?
Obliterated.
I agree. I agree with you. I think the Big Ten best chance, obviously, is Wisconsin to run the table.
I borderline want to say it's their only chance. I almost want to say that Wisconsin is the Big Ten's only chance. Michigan State is their next best hope.
Michigan State is a long shot.
Because their losses are good. The losses, their losses to Notre Dame was obviously great. Remind me of that game. Was it close?
No, it wasn't close. But they turned the ball over, and all the turnovers led to scores. That's a rarity, because rarely do you blow out Michigan State.
Right.
Michigan State is a really good, tough team. Always have been. It was 38-18, but 21 points came off of turnovers. Notre Dame was the better team.
Right.
Don't get me wrong. They were the better team. But those games are usually. You're usually ice bagging and bleeding after those kind of games. That one got away from Michigan State because of the turnover.
And the Northwestern loss, you're going to make fun of me because it's my school, but we are ranked now in the top 25, and it was triple overtime.
Yes, it was.
Right? So, and it was at Northwestern. So, and they're on the road against a ranked team and lost in triple overtime. We didn't beat them 38-18. It's not a terrible loss. So if they win out, and again, they've got a long way to go to do it. If they win out, they'll be able to make an argument. They'll be able to stand there and scream from the mountaintop. But I think they would certainly lose out to Auburn.
I think the odds will be against them, even if they won out. I think Wisconsin is the best chance there. You're talking about in the Pac-12, Washington, their highest ranked, sitting at number 9. A lot of people already putting them out, saying they don't have a shot. USC just hanging around there now. It's sitting at number 11, but they have the 2 losses. So I think the Pac-12 is in a lot of trouble. I think Oklahoma, TCU, obviously the winner of that game just has the 1 loss, and they're sitting pretty, no doubt about it.
The winner of that game controls a destiny. I think the winner of that game has a slot with its name on it that if they win out, they get.
Do you?
I do.
So who comes out of the top 4? Notre Dame? What if Clemson?
The loser of Notre Dame and Miami comes out.
No, I'm saying the top 4 right now. The
loser of Georgia, Alabama comes out.
Do they?
Well, unless they put in both of the SEC teams. Yeah,
yes.
Okay, yeah. Fair enough. If they put in both the SEC teams, then someone gets left out.
Yeah.
But that's never happened before, and we'll see. Now we're painting a picture where those two teams both win out.
What's never happened
and
before?
Then
a non-conference champion.
No, 2 teams in the same conference.
Okay.
What we're painting there is a scenario where those 2 teams both win all the rest of the games, and then it's a field goal game in the SEC title game.
Yes.
If that happens, then you're right. I'm with you. Someone might get bumped out.
It's going to be interesting.
But barring that, if we're going to play this out like blackjack and everything's going to be a face card, I think the Big 12 champ, if it's one of those 2, has a spot with its name on it, and the Big 10 does not.
I agree.
The Big 10 does not. Okay. We're just this is the beauty of it. We don't know. What the hell do we know?
Because next week, again, there are 7 ranked games. This all changes next week.
Right. But I think the ACC, if you're going to include Notre Dame with the ACC grouping, has the edge over the Big Ten for sure.
Yeah,
and I think the Big 12 does too because of Oklahoma's win over Ohio State.
The best of Mike and Mike.
All right, here we are. Great hour on the way here. We're talking football with Jon Gruden and Kirk Herbstreit. We're presented by Progressive Insurance. Those guys and everybody always on the Shell Pennzoil Performance line. And I'd like to say thank you to 2 different people or groups of people. One of them is to the Chicago Bears for selecting Mitchell Trubisky ahead of Deshaun Watson, and the other is to Mike Golic for making me a bet on the outcome of that. He bet me that Watson would be the first quarterback taken. Yep. I said Trubisky would go first. I won, and so Golic today has catered breakfast for the entire staff, and I must say it is delicious.
Yeah, the cafeteria did a great job. We got breakfast sandwiches, we got pancakes, we got scrambled eggs, bacon, sausage, breakfast potatoes, some pastries out there. If you're going to do it, we're going to do it right.
Can't help but notice there were no egg whites out there.
There is no egg whites and no fruit. Sorry.
I see no fruit. I see no vegetables of any kind.
The first thing, and that was the bet. Now, I enjoy doing this. I did it last year just to do it one time, but this time it was because I lost a bet. But the crew was very happy that I lost this bet. Because if you lost the bet and you were in charge of breakfast, there would have been like veggies out there.
Oh, yeah.
Egg white omelets, fruit.
Well, the breakfast sandwiches, for example, could have come on some sort of a grainier wrap than the toasted white bread that I
toasted white bread with egg
enjoying.
And bacon and sausage and every sloppy thing in there for it.
I mean, there are a lot of other options that one can go with.
Yeah.
But yes, you're correct. I think that my breakfast would have received far less enthusiasm than it has received. And I'm told that you taped a nice little thing for the Mike and Mike account on Twitter that you can go on there, folks, if you want to see it. Golic sort of showing everyone the delightful breakfast buffet that we were all enjoying.
All because of the Chicago Bears.
Yeah, because they took Trubisky ahead of Watson. For this moment, it looks like a mistake. Look, Watson is hurt.
Yeah.
But only in that he was so dynamically spectacular. But that doesn't mean 5 years from now that we won't look back on it.
It's exactly right.
So we'll see. Anyway, we'll get to Herbie coming up in just a few minutes again with all the college football stuff. But first, do we have a song? Well, we do have a song. Okay. I'm looking over at the song. And I really don't know what to expect here. We're going to bring John in.
Okay.
I just see the title of it. We weren't consulted on this. This could go either way.
No.
This could go either way. Jon Gruden, here's the song for this morning. Jon Gruden, how do we feel about the Doors?
I love Jim Morrison. I think that's a great call. That pretty much sums up some of the blocking in the NFL right now that I'm looking at. It's confusing.
Well done. Okay. Look how happy Bickler is. Bickler picking the song. The look of nervousness on his face
nervous
as we awaited John's reaction was with $1,000. Anyway, good morning, Jon Gruden. How we doing?
Hey, good. Good morning, guys.
Good morning. So let's go backwards first, then work our way forward. You guys have Dolphins and Panthers this coming weekend, but you had Green Bay and Detroit this past week, and I enjoyed watching the Lions play, and I feel like every time I watch them play, I don't understand why they're only 4-4. That's such a good team. Stafford is good. They tell us about the inconsistency. Tell us. I'm sure you watched every single snap of their season leading up to this game. That looks to me like a team that should be better than 4-4, and I still think with their remaining schedule, they have an excellent chance to win that division. Give me your overall view of the Lions right now.
I like the Lions, and they had a great first quarter of the season. They were out of the gate quickly. They lost 3 straight games. They lost some heartbreaking games also, Mike. The last play of the game against the Atlanta Falcons, I personally thought Golden Tate won the game. And you don't get 480 yards at home and don't turn the ball over and lose. They found a way to screw things up a little bit in the red zone against the Steelers, but they were plenty good enough to win that night on both sides of the ball. This is a good team, I think, like a lot of teams right now. At the midpoint of the season, everybody knows exactly what they have. And I think the Lions, with their schedule, are going to be in the playoffs for sure at the end of this season.
So then there's the other side, the Green Bay Packers, who were the healthiest they've been in a while. That starting 5 on the O-line, I think it was only the second time they started a game. They lost Balaga with the knee injury later on in that game, so he'll be done. And we had numbers from Hundley, coach, that said, so many passes, 5 yards or less down the field, some behind the line, a big number of that. Are they in a situation where, I know he was checking down or maybe the calls were that way, you could tell us better than we can. Is it a guy that's going to have to, the offense is going to have to throw down the field more because they don't have another part of their team that can make up for that difference?
You know what, Mike? They're going to have to score. I don't care how they do it. They're going to have to score more points. Their defense is not what it was. Personnel on defense, not nearly what we're used to seeing in Green Bay. And the offense can't get the ball. If you look at time of possession in our game the other night, I'll bet Detroit had the ball almost 40 minutes. They never punted. And when you're a young quarterback, you got a lot of moving parts. You got a rookie tailback. You need to get the ball back a little bit. In Green Bay, just can't get the ball back. Back-to-back home games, Drew Brees, Matt Stafford went into Lambeau Field and took control of the game. But I think it starts with giving the offense, Mike McCarthy, more opportunities so they can do the things that you're talking about, which is play action pass, push the ball, run the read option. You need a couple mulligans during the course of the game so you can make some adjustments on the sideline. Green Bay can't do it right now. This defense is really struggling.
And I am as nervous asking this question to Jon Gruden and with Mike Golic sitting next to me as the members of our staff are choosing the songs every week. But I think it has to be asked, which is, John, when you watch the Packers play without Aaron Rodgers and you watch the Texans play without Deshaun Watson and some of the other games that we see around the league, the Cardinals playing without Carson Palmer, you recognize the extraordinary value and the scarcity of these quarterbacks. So I'm not even going to let Golic. I'm not even looking in your direction as I ask the question. Is there anything we are not currently doing that we could to prevent even further any injuries to quarterbacks, Jon Gruden, because they are so valuable and so important to the game?
I think it all starts with the way we practice. I've said it a million times. And look, the offensive lines around the league they're being handicapped with the way we practice. They don't wear pads. They're only allowed to have 14 padded practices. I think you're allowed to pad up 3 times after, I think, November 1st or whenever there's 6 games left. So if you're Taylor Decker of the Detroit Lions, a first-round left tackle, and you've missed the entire training camp and you've missed the first 8 games and you've never had a pad on, you're supposed to walk out there and have 3 padded practices and be the solution at left tackle? There's only one team that I know of in pro football today, and this is the halfway point of the season, that has had all 5 starters start every game, and that's the Rams. And everybody's dropping their jaw like, wow, the Rams are on fire, and it's a great credit to them. But the big reason is they've had the same starting 5. And I look at my brother's team, the Redskins. They went up to Seattle last week without 4 starting linemen, and it's a halfway point of the season. It's hard to audible. It's hard to change plays. It's hard to pick up stunts. It's hard to communicate. It's hard to play, period. And when that happens, your quarterback takes a lot of licks.
You look at the Super Bowl last year. Atlanta had their 5 linemen started every single game. Yep. I think New England was right there as well. A great point about the offensive line. It's been made a decent amount of times, but it is very, very true about the practice schedule. Remember, this was the players that wanted this. The players wanted the offseason to start later and such. So this is kind of what comes along with it. So your Monday nighter is the Miami Dolphins and the Carolina Panthers. Let's start with Miami and really go kind of behind the scenes a little bit with Adam Gase coming out and saying what he said about really the offense, and guys aren't diving into the playbook enough and have to understand the work ethic. Then Jay Ajayi gets traded, so you know where that relationship was. How is Adam Gase to keep that, forgetting before you even get on the field, off the field, keeping that locker room in one piece?
That's a real challenge. Sometimes you just don't have the right chemistry in the locker room to start with. They've had problems on the coaching staff. A well-documented assistant coach was released. He had a problem, a real problem. And that's your offensive line coach. That's your coaching staff. That's not good when you go to a team meeting the next day, Mike. And they had a problem with Lawrence Timmons. I don't know what happened. I don't know the story. Ajayi had a problem there. They traded him. It's just been a number of different things. They right now are coming off a good offensive performance, but another tough, heartbreaking loss. This is just a team that started by losing their quarterback. They bring in Jay Cutler out of the broadcast booth, and from day one, it's been a real problem, and I think a real challenge. It's still going on in Miami.
Dolphins and Panthers again, the Monday nighter this coming week, 8:30 Eastern, as always on ESPN. Around the league a little bit, I really would like to get your perspective on what's going on with Jameis Winston. You mentioned that you would run into him in a restaurant recently, and I know you live there in Tampa, so you're close to the circumstance with him. And we saw the action that he took on the sideline the other day that almost felt like it certainly did ultimately provoke what happened with Mike Evans. And a lot of people were basically saying, to sum it up, what is the starting quarterback doing, poking his finger into the back of a defensive player and all of that? A lot of people have also been making a big deal about his pregame motivational speech, which just seemed a little bit odd. What are you seeing in Jameis Winston right now, and what is your perspective on all of it?
Yeah, I was disappointed in the whole fiasco as well. Mike. I think it's just bad for football. And I'm stunned by it, honestly. I think he's just so emotional. If you know this kid, I know it looks bad, but he is a great kid. And he really, really wants to do well. And he's doing everything he can to inspire his teammates. And sometimes it turns some people off. And I think he needs to tone it down a little personally. I've said it before. I think part of the problem with Winston early in games is his heart is beating as fast as mine. And he's got to be a little bit like Joe Montana. You got to be cool and calm and collected, even in adversity, even in the exciting times. You have to somehow be more of a flatliner. And I think he's got to learn. He's still a very young quarterback with a lot of ability that's fighting through an injury. Their team is not playing well. But I think he needs to take advantage of some time off, get the shoulder right, and just kind of reassess where he is, and I believe he'll do that.
And then one more for you, John, to finish it on a positive note. You were at one time the wonder kid of the NFL, you head coach of the Raiders at an incredibly young age. You look at what Sean McVay is doing right now with the Rams. At the age of 31, he comes in there obviously with a mandate to turn Jared Goff around, and boy, has he done that. And they put up 50-plus points on the Giants this past weekend, and they seem to have a lot of really good young players. What are you seeing in the Rams right now in the coaching job their 31-year-old coach is doing?
Well, he's a close friend of mine, so I get really excited and proud talking about the Rams. But it all starts at left tackle. We talked about the offensive line earlier on this show. When you got guys that can pass protect and run block, you can do some things. And Andrew Whitworth, brought to the Rams, has made a huge difference on two teams. You look at the demise of the Bengals, he has a lot to do with that. And the uprise of the Rams, he has a lot to do with that, believe me. They have a new center that they brought in from Washington. They have the best back in football right now. And they've upgraded their receiving core if you look at Woods and Everett and obviously Sammy Watkins. But the scheme, I think the way that they teach the plays, drill the plays, and then run the plays is as good as there is in the league. And I'm glad we're talking about some positive stories because I think the Rams, the Saints, the Jaguars, Adrian Peterson, what he did as a veteran back, and the Washington Redskins with all those players out going to Seattle. I mean, there were some great performances last week highlighted by the Rams.
No question about it. All right, and John, as we let you go, I'm going to let you make the call on this, and Golic, you as well, because we've done a little investigation. So I told you Bickler looked nervous
he did.
At the song that he chose, but I have now been told that he selected that song because he went to the Gruden's Groove channel on Slacker and saw that song was on the playlist. So my question is, does that constitute A, good research, or B, cheating on the exam? John, I'll let you make the call. Which one is that?
That's just great research. I mean, that's just downright tremendous behind-the-scenes effort. Give him a sticker for his shirt. That's outstanding.
All right, well done. I agree. The staff is disagreeing. They want him crushed.
No, I agree.
Him crushed.
You make Jon Gruden happy. However it happens, it was the right way.
Okay. We'll do it again next week. Thank you, John.
Thanks, John.
All right, guys. Have a good one.
Jon Gruden, Dolphins, Panthers next Monday night. He's on the Shell Pennzoil Performance line, taking synthetic motor oil performance to a whole new level. Make the switch to Pennzoil Synthetics today. Yeah, John has the channel Gruden's Grooves on Slacker. And so, is that right, Bickler? You went and you just looked at like a playlist? Or how did you, what did you do here to orchestrate this little con that you pulled off?
Just hard work.
Just hard work. He's getting it done. He's feeling good about himself this morning because he's eating all of Golic's breakfast.
That's exactly right. Would it be fair to say the three biggest disappointments and surprises? The surprises would be the Saints, the Rams, and Jacksonville.
The positive surprises would be the Saints, the Rams, and Jacksonville. Yeah, sounds right.
And then on the negative side would be the Giants, Tampa Bay, and the Denver Broncos.
Yeah, I mean the Broncos are what, 4-5?
3-5.
3-5. Yeah, yeah. I mean, there are some other ones that aren't quite as jarring. Like, I thought the Raiders would look like one of the best teams in the league. They're not. I thought the Jets would be the worst team in the league. They're not. So, that, there are some that don't kind of jump out at you in the way those outliers do. Yeah, no one can argue with the teams that you're listing. And then there are some teams decimated by injury. I mean,
right. Those I
like
leave
the
out.
Packers and stuff like that.
You can't count those.
What they are. We thought other teams would be better than they were as well.
Hey, everyone, Mike Golic here. Support for the Mike and Mike podcast comes from our friends at Rocket Mortgage by Quicken Loans. Chances are you're confident When it comes to your work, your hobbies, your life, Rocket Mortgage gives you that same level of confidence when it comes to buying a home or refinancing your existing home loan. Rocket Mortgage is simple, allowing you to fully understand all the details and be confident you're getting the right mortgage for you. To get started, go to rocketmortgage.com/Mikes. Equal housing lender, licensed in all 50 states, NMLS, consumeraccess.org number 3030.
I just saved hundreds of dollars by switching to Geico. I'm so happy, I feel like I can fly.
Disclaimer, you will not be able to fly by switching to Geico. This is against the laws of physics and nature. If you find yourself flying, please seek professional and or medical help immediately. In the unlikely event you find yourself flying, you might be a superhero, or a pigeon, or a superhero named Pidgewoman, who was bitten by a radioactive pigeon. If you are indeed Pidgewoman, Geico retains all licensing publishing rights in the event Pidgewoman the movie becomes a top-grossing Hollywood blockbuster.
Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more.
It's a self-serving question, I grant you, because it's the first time in our school's history that Northwestern has been ranked in the top 25 in both football and men's basketball. But we are, and so is Notre Dame. Notre Dame is number 3 in the college football playoffs and number 14 in the preseason AP men's basketball poll. 2 of 5 teams that are ranked in both. Gave you a minute to think about it. Do you have the other 3?
Well, I had Michigan State.
That's correct. Michigan State, do you want the numbers? Michigan State is number 12 in football and number 2 in basketball.
I was wrong in my other 2 thoughts. I had thought Wisconsin and Oklahoma.
Yes, interesting. Wisconsin, always very good, but they graduated like their whole team last year in basketball. So they are not in the preseason ranked top 25, nor is Oklahoma.
I don't know.
So the answer is, who's your team playing this weekend in football?
They're playing Miami.
That's correct. So
really?
Miami is number 7 in football and number 13 in basketball. And then who is your arch rival that you just shellacked a couple of weeks ago?
USC?
Correct. USC is number 11 in the college football playoff rankings and number 10 in the AP preseason poll in men's basketball. So, again, purely self-serving.
Yeah.
I asked that question solely because Northwestern was part of the answer. And with that said, let's bring Kirk Herbstreit into the conversation. Obviously, it is an enormous little juncture in the college football schedule with more good games. I at the risk of hyperbole, I can't think of a better weekend, one that will determine a lot more stuff than we have ahead of us this weekend, including at Miami for number 3 Notre Dame and number 7 Miami. Game day will be there, and then Herbie and company will have the game 8 Eastern on ABC. Good morning, Kirk Herbstreit.
Good morning. How you guys doing?
Doing well.
We're doing great, and thanks for doing this a little early. We wanted to get a little extra time with you because obviously there's so much to get into. And so let's just start as generally as we can. As you watched these numbers be attached to all the teams last night, what to you was the most significant thing you saw coming out of last night's rankings?
I was interested, I guess, because the top 4 teams all won. A few of them were challenged, but they won. I was really interested to see what happened with Miami and Wisconsin, just because they're still unbeaten. Last week they had 6 one-loss teams ahead of them. Ohio State obviously lost. Penn State lost, so they went ahead of them. And I wanted to see if Miami would be ahead of Wisconsin or Wisconsin would be ahead of Miami. That was really where just because I think if these teams continue to win, I think everybody is very intrigued to see, hey, does Wisconsin truly control its own destiny if they win out and they win the Big Ten championship? Are they just a lock? I don't think that's necessarily true at this point. And, Miami, I think, is a different story. Miami still has Notre Dame to play. If they continue to win and they're undefeated, imagine a Miami-Clemson ACC championship game. I mean, the winner of that game you would think would be in a really good spot. So that was the thing that I was interested in, just because I thought Miami and Wisconsin arguably came off their best performances of the year, and I just wondered if they might be able to get ahead of some of those other one-loss teams like TCU.
I want to get back to that ACC title game in a minute, but back to Wisconsin for a moment. How much were they helped by the fact that Northwestern now jumped into the rankings and they beat Northwestern, and the fact that Iowa is in the rankings and they play Iowa this week? So how much – because I was with you. I still think an undefeated Wisconsin team, it could be interesting. They may not get in, but how much were they helped by those couple of things?
It helps. I mean, think about not just the numbers, but think about how good Iowa looked this past weekend, and now, fortunately for Wisconsin, they get them this weekend. I mean, that that beyond rankings, I mean, Iowa put it on Ohio State. I mean, 55-24, and everybody's looking at that Iowa team, and some people don't seem to want to ever give Iowa respect. I live in SEC country, and people kind of giggle at Iowa, and I don't, Iowa lost on the last play of the game to Penn State. They went to Michigan State the next week and lost in a one-possession game. Greeny knows a couple weeks later they lost to Northwestern, again, in a very low-scoring one-possession game. And
overtime.
Pat Fitzgerald, his team, a great game. And that's their losses this year. And then they blew Ohio State out, and now they're going to go to Madison. So, yeah, I think perception-wise, which is something that's been hurting Wisconsin, I think the rankings, the way they shook out last night, definitely helped them. And now these next 2 weeks, think about what they have. Iowa, they've got Michigan, who probably will be ranked by next week. And then they've got a Big Ten championship game. So, I'm not slighting Wisconsin at all. I just get aggravated when people say, hey, if they're an unbeaten in a Power 5, slam dunk, they're automatically in. That just feels like everybody gets a trophy to me kind of thought. If they're deserving and you think they're a top 4 team, absolutely put them in there. But I get frustrated because somebody says, hey, they're a Power 5, they're undefeated, they have to be in. That's more that Baylor thought, school of thought, and I'm just not a fan of that. But if they get through this grind that they have coming up in these next 4 weeks, they should get a real look at being up in the top 4.
So the fun of this, Herbie, we know is the hypothetical. So we've been talking a lot about if Georgia and Alabama are both undefeated in the SEC title game, and it's a instant classic one-pointer field goal game with the loser still get in. So we've talked about that. Let me throw this one at you as well. What if Miami beats Notre Dame this week in a pretty convincing way? Or they beat them. They're going to jump up in the rankings. Maybe they'll be in the top 4. Maybe they'll jump the Oklahoma-TCU winner. We'll have to wait and see. What happens if they then get to an ACC championship game undefeated against Clemson, and Clemson beats Miami to give them their only loss of the season in a instant classic one-point game? Is there any way you could see both of those teams from the ACC actually getting into the Final Four?
Chris Felica and I have talked about that possibility. Once Miami beat Virginia Tech, in fact, we started talking about that in the car after the game. It's funny how because Georgia and Bama are already at 1 and 2, and they've been up there these first couple weeks. It's a little bit easier to consider those two teams getting out and talking about what if it's a close game in Atlanta, would they be able to stay in the top 4 versus Miami, who's been climbing and trying to get up into consideration. But if Miami beats Notre Dame and they're able to finish out the rest of their regular season, which you would think with, I think, Virginia and Pitt, that they would be in good shape, and then get ready to play Clemson, at that point, you would think that they would probably be either in the top 4 or right on the fringe of being up in the top 4. I said last night that with all the injuries that have mounted with Alabama, I think that Clemson, when the dust settles at the end of the year, I think they're the best football team out there. If their quarterback Kelly Bryant's healthy, I think they're the best team, most complete team for sure. And if they're up there in the top 2 or 3, it would definitely be. If we're going to talk about Georgia and Alabama as a possibility, then I think you should have the same type of conversation hypothetically about Clemson and Miami. If Miami wins out and they're defeated, and Clemson's sitting there, they meet in the championship, and Miami were to win a really, really close game, and all these teams have one loss. Yeah, I mean, we would definitely be able to consider, or if Clemson will win a close game and all these teams have one loss, we would have to consider that. With all that being said, Mike, I still think I wouldn't be shocked if Georgia lost Saturday at Auburn. We've talked so much about the possibility of Georgia and Bama. I don't think it's going to happen. I don't think we're going to have 2 from one conference. I just want to say that now. We talk so much about hypotheticals. It's almost like I feel like we think this is going to happen. I think Georgia loses Saturday. I think there's a very good possibility that Auburn could make them have to throw when it's expected that they're throwing on 3rd and 7, 3rd and 8 on the road in a true SEC environment at Jordan-Hare. And that's the one thing we've not seen yet from Jake Fromm. If they can't run the ball and dictate when they pass, are they going to be able to get through Auburn, I think is something that a lot of us want to see. And but as I said, I don't think we'll have two from one conference by the time this thing's all done.
Tell you what, if Auburn wins that game, they play themselves right into the conversation with the game at home against Alabama looming towards the end. Herbie with us, brought to you by Allstate. Make sure you check out the Herbstreit and Fitzsimmons podcast. This week, the guest is Miami head coach Mark Richt as they get set to welcome Notre Dame in the game of the weekend this Saturday. We'll get to that in a second. I want to ask you, though, about Oklahoma State, because that game, it took like 6 hours to play because there's all these touchdowns and everything else. And certainly it did wonders for Baker Mayfield's Heisman candidacy. It vaulted him to the top of the Heisman race, and probably justifiably so. But if you're one of the people in that committee, Herbie, what would that game have done for your perception of the winner, considering that, the offense was unbelievable, but the defenses both looked so terrible? How would that have impacted your perception of those teams?
I'm not just personally a huge fan of these games that, these 50 to 48 type of games. And history has shown us in the modern era of college football that defense still matters. Defense typically, if you go back and look at the 3 years of the playoff, almost every year, with the exception of Oklahoma, the year they got in and played Clemson, you could look at scoring defense, and you would find that all of the teams that got into the playoff are up in the top 10, top 15, and really that part of their team is a strength. I thought Oklahoma had a chance to have a really strong defense this year with the way they played early in the year, and it's turned out, and they're very quick to defend. Hey, the Big 12 is different than every other league, and I agree with that. The Big 12 offenses are very, very talented, most of them, and the quarterback play, the receivers, the scheme itself, it's tough to defend. I get that. But when you watch it, it almost looks like the 7-on-7 of the summer has creeped into the fall with guys wearing pads. It looks like 7-on-7. And so it's a combination of, I don't think they have the personnel defensively that maybe some of the other leagues have. And I also think they're trying to defend quarterbacks and schemes that most teams don't have to defend. So I'd keep that in mind if I were on the committee. And I would look at it and say, right now, Oklahoma, because of Baker Mayfield, he's kind of an X factor, whether it looks pretty or not. It's almost like you look at a team that wins 10-7 and frown upon that because they can't score. Or do we look at that and say, boy, that defense is tough. Boy, they're physical. It just depends on they're winning. And Baker Mayfield, if it's a competitive game, he's going to win. It's that simple. And now I might be proven wrong Saturday. They play TCU. But look at their games this year with the exception of Iowa State. The Ohio State game was 13-10. Ohio State's lead with 2 minutes to go before it got out of control in the fourth quarter. And he made a few plays to turn that one around. Baylor, same thing. They got challenged. Number 6 makes big plays in that game. The Texas game, the Kansas State game, this past weekend. When the chips are on the table, he's the one guy in the country that delivers every single time. And so I'd almost give them the benefit of the doubt because of how often he comes through for them. But in general, I'm just not a fan of offenses having to outscore the other offense. I equate it to college basketball. I said last night, it's like it's Loyola Marymount. They hit the three, they score 112 points a game, and all of a sudden they get in the tournament and they get cold. All of a sudden they can't hit those threes, and they don't have the half-court offense to work the ball around and score. And now all of a sudden they're going to get knocked out of the tournament. That's what teams that have to score 48 a game remind me of. At some point, it's that three's not hitting, and what do you have to fall back on? And that's usually where a team like that ends up getting beat.
And then you guys, obviously, in Miami, for Miami Notre Dame, 3 versus 7. There are 7 ranked matchups this Saturday. This one could highlight them all. I thought the same thing. You mentioned that about Fromm, the Georgia quarterback, if they have to throw themselves into a game. I thought that about Notre Dame and Brendan Winbush, the quarterback who runs well. You see him throw well at times, but struggle throwing at times as well. That had been my concern, Herbie. If he has to throw them back into a game, that really hasn't been a test just yet for them. So just an initial kind of looking at this game, is that one of the issues you see as well, or what else?
That's yeah, absolutely. And Mike, you know from following that team that they've been able to overpower people up front, especially that left side. I've looked at a lot of film this week. The left side of that offensive line, they are incredible, and they'll both the left guard and left tackle can be making a lot of money in the NFL very soon. But they've been very fortunate with Josh Adams in the running game and Brandon Wimbush creating on third down scrambles. That's to me the game within the game is watching the Miami defensive front seven against the Notre Dame running game and the physicality. If you're right, if Wimbush is back there throwing when Miami knows, and they play a ton of man, and Manny Diaz believes in stunts and twists and blitzes, and it makes it tough on an offensive line. Wimbush creating, not necessarily throwing. If they're going to win, he's going to have to make some throws. But him creating on third down, how does Miami defend that? When they play a ton of man with their backs to the quarterback, they're going to have to spy. And when they spy, can that guy make plays to prevent him from scrambling around and making plays? But if he has to throw throughout the game on third down, because Miami is one of the best third down defenses in the nation, that'll be something that'll tell us a lot about who ends up winning this game. And should be we've been talking about it all week and watching. Every time I turn on ESPN, there's that 30 for 30, and I mean, it feels really good to see Notre Dame sitting there 8-1 in the top three. Here comes Miami with Mark Richt building this program back up. And I was there last week. The stadium was alive. And their fans are buying in and believing. And the future is incredibly bright for Miami with Mark Richt, no matter what happens Saturday. But this feels good to see two teams like this coming back to kind of relive the glory days of what it used to be. So it'll be a lot of fun. It's going to be hyped. And the atmosphere at Miami, when it's a big game, just feels different than anywhere else you go. And that magic was back last Saturday against Virginia Tech. I can only imagine what Notre Dame's going to be walking into in that stadium on Saturday night.
It's going to be a lot of fun to watch, and we have everything in the world riding on it. We got to run. Herbie, thanks a million for some extra time today. Enjoy it. Again, game day is down there this weekend, and so is the broadcast Saturday night primetime on ABC. Thanks, Herbie.
Thanks, Herbie.
You guys are the best. Take care, guys.
The best of Mike and Mike.
So for those who follow Vegas closely and the impact that should have on your perspective on games, I have a good little note here from Hembo. The line on Georgia-Auburn opened at Georgia -3, right? Georgia on the road, a 3-point favorite. It has since moved to 2.5, despite getting 87% of public bets. So the public is betting on Georgia, but the number is moving in the other direction. Sharps would tell you that bodes very well for Auburn because the line is moving in their favor despite the public telling you the opposite should happen. Now, it's early in the week. A lot of things can change between now and then. But these are the things that the people who know what they're doing pay attention to, and not the fans who throw $100 down in the sporting books.
I'm with you. The big buildings out there, they're for a reason. They get other people's money. I still like Georgia. I think Georgia and Bama will be undefeated when they meet, but it's a tough road. There's no doubt about it. For Bama, the schedule hasn't been as hard, and they've had monster injuries, especially at that linebacker position. And Auburn gets them both at home. That's certainly can be an advantage for them. But I still say those two teams, Alabama and Georgia, end up undefeated in the title game.
Meantime, it's time for Straight Talk, brought to you by Straight Talk Wireless. Best phones, best networks, no contracts. For those of you who weren't with us yesterday or weren't with us through the show, we have something as fabulous as it can possibly get here, and that is the wager between Golic and Dan Le Batard. The stakes have been set, and Golic kind of got suckered into this.
I think I did.
But it worked out great. So the loser of the wager between Golic, the Notre Dame alum, and Le Batard, the Miami alum, has to give Stu Gatz a massage. Now, my understanding is that Dan was trying to change some of this around yesterday. No. This has nothing to do with me. He's putting me into this somehow.
All that's about you getting it. You shouldn't be in it. This isn't your.
This is your
bet.
One
of your teams.
This is your wager.
You're just instigating, which is something you do, and I'm fine with it.
I really didn't. It came from a tweet. I just read aloud a tweet that said the loser should have to.
But you've kind of pushed it along. But that's okay. I don't blame you for any of this. This isn't your fight. This isn't your gig.
Yeah,
it's between me and Dan.
Correct. So the loser of this week's game will have to massage Stu Gatz. I can't say that without laughing.
This would be 1,000 times worse than the butt photo.
Oh, yeah. I agree.
Why did I do this?
You kind of got suckered into it, and I'm not sure how I did it, but it was ingenious. Golic and paying off another bet to me. Yet another bet.
Yeah.
Going out with a bang on these bets.
Oh.
Golic lost a bet to me on which quarterback would be drafted first this year, and as a result, he has catered a delightful breakfast for the entire staff.
It's a hearty breakfast. It's a filling breakfast.
The staff is really happy that you won. You lost that one. You lost. The staff won. As far as what the breakfast buffet is this morning. We're presented by Progressive Insurance. We'll have Lincoln Riley, the coach of Oklahoma, coming up in just a couple of minutes here on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. I want to simplify that note I gave you on Vegas a minute ago because a lot of people don't understand the way this stuff works necessarily. When I was saying the note on the Auburn-Georgia game, to put it as simply as we can, with the way the public loves Georgia, the line should be moving in one direction, but instead it's moving in the other. And that would suggest, for lack of an easier way of putting it, good things for Auburn as far as the sharps are concerned. The people who know what they're doing, the people who actually make money betting in Vegas would say that makes Auburn look like a good bet. Now, it's only Wednesday, and a lot can change between now and then. But that's the note, and it boiled down to its simplest that I was
So when you say a lot can change, what you mean is where the betting goes.
Right.
Nothing's going to change amongst the teams.
No.
Mind you. This has nothing to do with the actual players and the teams.
No, the wagering.
Okay.
The wagering,
it's the wagering that we're talking about, yes.
All right, so we have that. Then I want to play you this because I haven't heard it myself either. I heard about it. And I heard a good deal of the Le Batard show yesterday, but I did not hear this part. So we made this bet. You and Le Batard made this bet. You both got kind of suckered into it by me and a little bit by Stu Gatz.
Yeah.
But you made the bet. So the loser of the Notre Dame-Miami game this weekend, the loser of that wager between the two of you, has to give Stu Gatz a massage. It was actually Dan who brought into it a glute massage.
Yeah, he did.
Which only makes it worse than it already sounded. So I'm told that on the show yesterday, Le Batard tried to sort of get me involved in this. I haven't heard this yet, so let's listen to it together. This is from the Dan Le Batard show with Stu Gatz yesterday.
How does Greenberg frolic on the fringes without contributing anything to the cause?
That's a great point because you graduated from Miami. Golic graduated and played at Notre Dame. I'm involved. Greeny's the only person who is not involved. I think Greeny should have to massage me.
No, I think this is the way that it should work, just to save everybody money. And I am recalibrating the bet right now, Golic, because you guys suckered me into your radio hijinks. So this is the new bet. If I lose, I have to massage Stugatz's glutes on air. But if you lose, Golic, you have to massage Greenberg's glutes on air. That's the way we do that. Not Stu Gatz flown into Bristol for those greedy, lecherous paws of Golic. As one of your final acts on the show, you have to massage Greenberg's glutes if Notre Dame loses.
Now, neither of us...
I had not heard that.
Neither of us was present for this conversation.
No.
So we could not defend ourselves. So,
No.
Let's ask this question this way. If given the choice between massaging Stu Gatz or massaging me, which would you rather do? I mean, and at the risk of
where is death in this?
Floating my own horn. It's an option.
Yeah.
But I mean, let me put it this way. I'm the cleanest person you're ever going to come across. Does Stu Gatz look cleanly?
No.
No. Do I? I'm pretty cleanly. You've known me for 18 years. You've made fun of how clean I am.
Yeah, I have.
You could eat dinner off me. Okay? You could eat off me anytime you wanted to. I am germ free. I am like I live my whole life as close to being wrapped in saran wrap as a person conceivably can.
If we did this part of the bet, which I don't really want to do.
Nor do I.
Would you root for Miami? So I would have to massage you?
No, in this case, I think I'd actually hold on, where's my song? I got the song for you right here. Hold on a second.
You'd root for Notre Dame.
Yes, I want you to massage Stugotz. Or Batard to massage Stugotz. I have someone else who gives me massages.
Listen,
I don't need to get massaged by Batard or by you. That doesn't sound good to me.
I understand both sides of it. It should be a Dan and I bet, and Stugotz got thrown into it. So they're basically saying, why should Stugotz get thrown into this and you not?
Because he's Stugotz. This is what he does. He gets thrown into things like this. He shaves his head. He does. I mean, that's why the joke was the loser should have to massage Stugotz. No one said the loser should have to massage Greeny. I don't get thrown into the middle of these things. Stugotz does. This is his lot in life. If that's your lot, then that's what you do. His lot is to be that guy.
I have a stomach ache.
Well, wait until you have to massage Stugotz. Okay, thank goodness something else can happen now. The latest college football playoff rankings are out, and there was no change in the top 5 of the rankings. Georgia, Alabama, Notre Dame, Clemson, and Oklahoma are the top 5. And joining us now to talk about it on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line, the head coach of the Sooners, getting set for a huge game this weekend against TCU. Lincoln Riley is back with us on Mike and Mike. Good morning, Coach.
Hey, good morning, guys. How are y'all?
Doing well.
We're doing great, and here's what we love to do, and that's why this stuff is so great. We have sat here and we've worked out basically every conceivable hypothetical possibility involving you winning this week and who wins, and they win, and all that kind of stuff. We pay enormous amounts of attention to this because we don't have any better way to occupy our time. How closely do you follow what goes on during the season as far as the rankings this committee puts out?
Not very much, honestly. I think part of it is being involved as much as we are with our team and trying to get them ready to go. And then I think part of it is just, I think the confidence that I have in this league, how strong the league has been this year. I think it's one of the strongest years in recent memory for the Big 12, and just very confident that whichever team takes care of business is going to be in great shape as far as the playoffs concerned.
And that's how you deal with it, but how do you deal with how your players deal with it, who are 18 to 22-year-olds who live on Twitter and see it all over Twitter after the ranking show goes on to see where Oklahoma is or where their team is on why this team should be in this position? Do you talk to your players about it? Because you know that they're reading about it and discussing about it and on Twitter about it.
Sure. No, we definitely do. I think it'd be naive of us to think that they're not looking at it. And so we just try to give them perspective, and help them understand that just like preseason rankings, these rankings don't matter. The ones that matter are going to be here in 3 or 4 weeks. And so, you've got to take care of business each and every week. You can't have slip-ups, and you got to play your best ball at the end of the year. And so that's if we do that, then I think we'll be where we want to be in those rankings here in a few weeks.
Mike and Mike, head coach Lincoln Riley, Oklahoma. I mentioned huge game ahead of you against TCU, but quickly let's look back on your win over Oklahoma State this weekend in the game known as Bedlam, and it was most certainly that. When you walk off the field after a game like that, your team has won, but there were 114 points scored. What are the thoughts going through the mind of a head coach when you win a game but your defense allowed as many points as it did Saturday?
First, we beat what I think is a top 10 team on the road in a great atmosphere, and I don't care if you do it 3-0 or 62-52. Winning on the road is hard, and that was a big win for us in our program, and was really proud of all our players. You go back and look at it, there's still certainly some things we could do better on all sides of the ball. We didn't play well defensively the first half. We had to kick a couple field goals offensively, had a couple of turnovers. We certainly didn't play perfect by any means, but we found a way to win. We beat another very good football team there. Of course, you're going to make the corrections that you got to make, and always try to do better the next time. That's going to happen regardless of the outcome. But to go into that place against that great a team with the senior quarterback, all the weapons that they have offensively, and to find a way to win the football game when we weren't at our best, that's about as good as it gets.
Oklahoma head coach Lincoln Riley joining us on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. Along those lines, when there's so much that the committee and or the public parse through, is that some say, boy, how can you put a team up there that's gave up 52 points or that's given up 27 points a game, and the rep, however you want to look at it or whatever the perception is of what the defenses are in the Big 12. Do you feel like you as a league are fighting that all the time, and what's your response to people who make that argument?
Well, I think you just got to educate them. You know, it's the same defense that went on the road in Columbus, Ohio, and held one of the top offenses in the country to 200 yards under their average and won that game. It's the same defense that went into the Sugar Bowl last year and really shut down Auburn. So, I mean, you know, we get the perception out there. I think people need to begin to look at the other side of it. You know, I think that the offenses in this league are that good, and you're going to face really, really good offenses each and every week, and you don't do that in the other conferences. And that's just a fact of the matter. You know, if any other conference was sitting there playing offenses like ours, Oklahoma State, Texas Tech, several of the others that you've got in this league, it'd be a different story in those leagues too. And again, I think the times when we've had the non-conference matchups, whether it be, you know, like early this year in the non-conference games, or again going back and looking at the bowl games, I mean, there's just no way if we play the worst defense in the country as a Big 12 that we would go into the bowls last year and allow the least amount of points per game of any conference when you're having these interconference matchups. So it doesn't make sense. You know, for years and years it's been, you know, how dominant the SEC's been on defense. There are really good defenses in the SEC, but I also think the offenses, you know, have been a little bit behind, in my opinion. And so the truth probably lies somewhere in the middle. We got some teams in this league that can play really good defense, and we've got a lot of high-powered offenses, and that's just the way this league's built.
Lincoln Riley is with us. The one thing no one can question is the record of your quarterback in big games. Oklahoma's won 7 straight against ranked opponents, and Baker Mayfield in those games has thrown 19 touchdowns with 4 picks and has a QBR of 96 out of a possible 100 in those games. Tell us about your quarterback. You're obviously aware of all the Heisman talk that surrounds him and how much he was helped by the huge performance this past weekend. Where are you right now with your quarterback and the notion that he right now feels like the leader for the Heisman Trophy?
Yeah, he's played well for our team. You know, and honestly, he's not doing much different than he's done the last 3 years. You know, guy's, you know, been a great player for us. Been an emotional leader and spark plug for this team. There's no question. He's probably the thing that's most impressive this year is he's done it with basically a completely new group of skill guys. You know, been able to adapt to those guys, learn their strengths, get on the same page with them, and still, you know, produce at a high level. So he does a lot for us. You know, like I said, I know those other things will be for other people to decide, but we're darn sure glad that he's our quarterback, and he's done a tremendous job leading our team.
Do you ever have to calm him down? He's an excitable guy.
He is. You know what? As a sophomore, I did at times, certainly. A little bit less last year, not as much this year. He's one of those unique guys that's been able to find a balance between being fiery, you know, all the different things that you see, but then when it's time to play, you know, he's able to focus in and really do his job kind of at a controlled high level. And that's why I think you see all the great plays and all the flair and all that, but you also see a guy that takes care of the football that's, you know, one of the most efficient quarterbacks, you know, if not the most that's ever played college football. I mean, the numbers would back that up. So, I mean, he's done a great job of being able to balance the two.
So the game against TCU, a monster game, as we mentioned, there are 7 ranked matchups this week. Certainly one of the top ones is you guys and TCU. So looking at this game and knowing that turnovers is always there and can influence the outcome of a game, other than that, what does your team need to be at its best at to beat a team like TCU?
Quite a bit. You know, they're probably the most complete team that we've played. They're really, really strong defensively. You know, one of the top defenses in the country this year. Coach Patterson always does a great job on that side of the ball, and they're playing really well there. So it'll be a challenge for us. You know, Kenny Hill's back at quarterback and playing very well for them, and they've got some of the best offensive skill in the conference. And then one of the most dangerous return men, and Kevontae Turpin. So, you know, they can beat you from all 3 sides, and they've done that throughout the year with other teams. So they're always a challenge. It's been a great series against them. I think I saw like maybe the last 5 games have all been decided by 7 points or less. So it's been a tremendous matchup over the years, and I'm sure it will again here Saturday night.
All right, should be a lot of fun to watch. Coach, we appreciate the time. Congratulations on a fascinating week, and obviously no rest for the weary. Big one this weekend. Good luck, and thanks again for today.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
Lincoln Riley with us. Mike and Mike presented by Progressive Insurance on Baker Mayfield. He could become, in fact, I'll go so far as to say right now, is going to become the first quarterback to finish in the top 4 of the Heisman voting 3 different times.
Yeah.
I don't know that he's going to win it, but I think he's going to finish in the top 4, almost for sure. I guess if they lose this weekend and he doesn't
and
play
Tebow
well,
would have been. Tebow was 5th one year, his senior year, right? He won it, and then I think he was in the top 3, and I think he was 5th. That last year, but he would have been the closest to that with possibly Baker being in the top 4 and absolutely the front runner right now, no doubt about that.
Let me ask you a question.
Yeah,
because you played in these games and you played in. Well, I don't want to ask this like I'm knocking you, but the teams you were on Notre Dame, you didn't play on great teams.
Nope.
Did you play huge games? I mean, did you have games over the course of a season like this?
The biggest game that one of our biggest wins was my sophomore year. We played Pitt in Pitt. They were 7-0. I believe they were 7-0. Number 1 in the country. Marino was the quarterback. Their whole line ended up in the NFL. And we went to their place and we beat them. That was probably the biggest win I had while I was there. We had some others, went down to LSU and had a big win there against a ranked team. But nothing, again, we were independent, so there was never a conference, and we were never going to a major bowl with the records that I had. Went to the Liberty Bowl and the Aloha Bowl. So never a lot riding on it outside of, the USC rivalries, playing Michigan, and then when we were playing some high-ranked teams.
So we almost have to ask Mikey, like, what is the difference between a college kid getting ready to play in one of these games versus an NFL player? How does it feel different? How different is it? I think the job of the coach is so different in getting these kids ready to play. I mean, look what happened to Ohio State. You can say whatever you want, and I'm not taking a darn thing away from Iowa. Iowa is good. They're much better than people in the country give them generally credit for being. But they're not 21 points better than Ohio State.
Right.
Ohio State comes from this huge, comes all the way from behind in this incredibly dramatic comeback, beats Penn State. Everyone in the world is talking about them. Oh, they've played their way back into the championship race. Right. And a week later, they got to get set to play a good team on the road, and they lay a total egg. Mm-hmm. Again, I'm not saying Iowa couldn't have beaten them normally.
Right, but not that big a score.
Them off the field.
I get it.
Ohio State, that happened. It's tough. So now you're Oklahoma. You just went into Oklahoma State. That's your rival. You beat them 62-52 or whatever the final score. I think that's what it was.
Yeah, that's what it was.
And now you've got, now Tuesday it comes out and you're number 5 in the country. And now you got to get ready to go play another really good team 6 days later. I think for a coach, that's got to be a little bit
I think
tough.
it is. I think also the biggest difference from the NFL to college is dealing with 18 to 22-year-olds.
That's what I mean.
Where in the pros, it's their job. This is all they do. Here, you're college kids with college emotion. So, yeah, it can be tougher for Mike and Jake. I mean, before the title game, when they became number 1, and back then you had to be 1 or 2, in that old system. When they became number 1, now you had to take care of your business and win. And the last game of the season was against Notre Dame's biggest rival in USC. So that was a monster game to know it's your rival, but you have to win it to be where the only place a Notre Dame is happy to be as far as being in the national title hunt. Then one of the biggest differences between college and pro is there were 44 days in between that.
Right.
And, obviously.
That's that game.
Yeah, that's
right. A whole different
That's
animal.
a whole different animal,
But I'm
without
talking
question.
about, like, if you're playing for the Eagles, and one week you've got Dallas, and that one's for first place in the division, and the next week you're playing the Giants, and they're one game behind you. You're pros. You know how to put one game behind you.
You're supposed to, but it happens there
one.
as well. Listen, in the pros, they lay eggs as well. It's difficult to explain. You're sitting there on the sideline. I've been part of those games where you're like, this shouldn't be happening. There is no way we should be losing to this team with what we have right. I definitely had more situations in the pros where something was riding on it.
Do you remember one?
God, off the top of my head, I mean,
do you think there's that kind of? I guess what I'm asking is that kind of emotional carryover from a big game to the next.
We have to say there has to be something. I mean, emotional to physical, because yes, I've been in games where we're on the sideline going, this should not be happening. There's no way we should be losing to this team, or they should be beating us this badly, or this should be going on. But it happens. And we're asked because we're players to put our finger on it, but it's very difficult because you look at the week, I guarantee you the preparation is Oklahoma coming off that big win, but now it's TCU. They're grinding. They're getting after it. They understand the ramifications. So it's not like, we beat Oklahoma State. Now we got TCU coming. We can all take a breather and not watch our film and not work as hard in the weight room or anything like that. I guarantee you that doesn't go on. You're working just as hard knowing the ramifications of the game, but sometimes you get to the game and you don't get that bounce your way, you get things working against you, you get a couple of calls against you, and then mentally that can affect you. Certainly we can ask Herm that as well, but at every level that can happen to you, and you stand there on the sideline and you say, how is this happening? I guarantee Ohio State was thinking that last weekend. How is this happening? There's no way it should be happening.
Right. And again, that to me is easier to picture with a bunch of kids who probably – celebrate like crazy, and I don't mean that in any negative way. I just mean like emotionally exhale in a huge way, and I can picture that it would be somewhat difficult to get, like you and I, we have this job all these years, that you kind of have to be the same every day.
Every day,
There's sort of a sense of consistency that you have to have every single day. But then there are those moments that just kind of stand out. You'll have something really huge happen or whatever it is, and then you got to put that behind you and you got to go on. But, like I'm 50 and you're 53 and we know how to do this stuff. Whereas if you're 19 or 20 or whatever it is and you go back to school and everyone's carrying you around on their shoulders, and now you got to be in there watching film.
Yeah, and then Moore's riding on the next game. Yeah, could be tough.
So I think that's an interesting thing. Okay, a story just came across.
54, by the way.
54.
I know I look 53.
Listen, you look 3 years younger than you looked in. We just showed in these flashback clips they're showing. We showed one that was only 3 years ago. It was when we did the butt photo.
Yeah.
And we showed. I'm telling you, you look 5 years younger now than you looked 3 years ago.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous. You're getting younger as we go forward.
I am Benjamin Button.
The best of Mike and Mike.
Right now,
you play to win the game.
He's here to play and win the game. The one and only Herman Edwards is in our studio. Good morning, Herman.
Good morning. Good to be here. It's kind of interesting. 8 weeks left for most teams, right? If you've got 4 wins, you do the math. You're telling your team, you're not telling them, but you understand. Players realize, hey, if we go 6-2 these last 8 games.
So is that where you are as a coach? You guys do it in quarters. You just finished, obviously, the halfway poll here. So is that the message now? Obviously, depend. So let's take the message if you're a top team, and then take a message if you're a bottom team.
Yeah, if you're one of those teams with 4 wins, even though it might not look good, you might be 4-4, and you're sitting there and you're trying to look at a team maybe has a 2-game lead in your division. Let's just say the AFC West. You got to look at yourself and say, look, we got 8 games left. Can we win 6 out of 8? If we can do that, we're going to get 10 wins. We might not win a division, but we're probably going to get in the playoffs. So I think a lot of teams are still alive, and that's what you're preaching.
All right, so then I want to start, however, with the story that I teased a moment ago, which involves a team that is definitely not still in it. But it's interesting news. ESPN's Jordan Renan is reporting that the New York Giants have been given a directive by their ownership. Let me just read this to you instead of trying to talk through it and doing it as badly as I am. There was a directive given several weeks ago by co-owner of the New York Giants, John Mara, to start looking closely at the top college quarterbacks. This occurred around the time it became apparent that the Giants' season was headed nowhere, in part because Odell Beckham was out with a broken ankle. VP of Player Evaluation Mark Ross, who runs the Giants draft, went personally to scout UCLA quarterback Josh Rosen in recent weeks. Rosen is among the nation's top quarterback prospects. Our FPI projects the Giants will have the 4th pick in the draft. The last time they drafted in the top 5 was 2004. That year they got Eli Manning in the draft. Remember, they didn't take him. They drafted and then traded with Rivers and Manning. But whatever, that's how they got Eli, who turns 37 years old in January. So we look at that information. It can just mean they're doing their homework, or it can mean that there is a mind at the top of the organization to at least be ready to consider moving on from the Eli Manning era. What do you guys think?
Well, I mean, I guess I would ask Herman, it could be a couple of ways. Could be moving on or could be drafting the next guy.
Right.
But Eli's still there, but the transition is going to happen. I mean, I don't know if it means you're getting rid of Eli, or if it's Eli. Does Eli become a bridge?
Right.
Former number 1 quarterback becoming then a bridge to the next guy. I think Eli would still be the quarterback. I would say you know what you have in him. You've built your defense up. You get your weapons back on offense, and you work on your running game, and you see where you can go with this thing.
Well, yeah, this is the conversation you're having. Is Eli the bridge? Now, you drafted Webb last year. Now, I know it wasn't a high pick.
Right, 3rd rounder, Davis Webb.
So if you go down this road, you got to ask yourself that question. Is Eli the bridge, or do we trade Eli to get something for him before the draft? I mean, all these scenarios come into play. It's kind of ironic reading this. that was the scenario for the New York Jets coming into the season, right? They were tanking to get the first pick. Well, that ain't going to happen by any stretch of the imagination because they're playing very competitive. So it's kind of interesting. Eli is 37 years old. You're going to have to move on now. Does this magnify it? Is this all on Eli? No, but some of it is as well. I mean, he's not playing great by any stretch of the imagination. So what do you do going into next year? I mean, how do you evaluate this team? That's going to be the whole key. And it starts from the coaching staff and goes all the way down to the players. And that's how it works when you have a season like this. How do you go forward now? And is it we get a new quarterback? What are we going to do? That's up to the organization. It'll be interesting to see how these guys finish up. What direction this organization takes.
I'm wondering, when you're a head coach and you do evaluations, do you give a number to a player coming out in the draft? And if or however you rank him, because that's the one thing I've always said is, well, are they going to take a quarterback, over this guy? And said, well, it depends on the grade. Right. So you have this crop of quarterbacks coming out, and you have Eli Manning, and they're saying, look at the quarterbacks. What's the grade minimum you have to be at that says, okay, we'll think about taking this guy, to where if the grade is X or lower, then, well, we're not going to consider that guy, and Eli still is the quarterback?
Well, you grade the players as you grade them, but the board kind of dictates who the best players are. And let's just say a quarterback is in the top 5 of your best players. Are you in need of a quarterback? Most teams are. If that's the case, you're probably going to take the guy, right? Because that's the position if you get it right, you have a position in need for every team when you don't have that guy. And if he's a good player, you got a 10-year run with the guy if he can stay healthy. Your organization is set in place for a decade. You can say, I've got this quarterback X, good player. If he doesn't get hurt, we are set for the next 10 years. And you feel good about that because now you got the foundation of your organization set already. So if there's a guy there that you deem this is the guy, then you go get him. You don't hesitate.
And then that would create the next question. Eli Manning as a quote-unquote bridge quarterback.
Yes.
Look what happened with his brother in Indianapolis. When Peyton got hurt and understanding the circumstances were different, he was hurt, and it wasn't clear then that he'd ever be able to come back and play at a top level, which he certainly did in Denver. Maybe not the year they won the Super Bowl, but his first year or two in Denver, he was unbelievable. But forgetting that, they made the decision. We took Luck. He's going to be our guy. We're going to move on from Peyton. Yes. Thanks for everything you've done. We love you, but we're moving on. So if you draft, I'm just making this up, now you're the Giants, and you draft Josh Rosen, or you draft Josh Allen, or you draft Baker Mayfield, or you draft one of these guys, do you want to keep Eli there, or do you want to move on from that?
Well, it's interesting you say that. What offense are you going to run when you draft this quarterback? That's critical as well. I mean, is he more mobile? Who are you drafting?
Well, who's the coach? Right now you got an offensive coordinator as the coach who I don't think anyone expects to be back there next year.
Well, and that has something to do with it, too. Who is the coach? How are you going to use the guy? Right now, they are built to throw the football. I mean, if everyone's healthy, they banked on, guess what? We're going to throw the football quick. We got a West Coast offense. We're going to run it late in the game when we have leads, but that didn't transpire. Now, so the first thing you got to say, well, okay, we're going to throw it because we have the players to throw it. Do you have an offensive line to protect the quarterback, whoever he may be? If you say we get a more elusive quarterback, does that help you? Yeah, because he doesn't have to sit in the pocket. So all these things become a factor. Look, if Eli is not the bridge, he's still worthy enough to go somewhere, let's just say, Jacksonville.
Mm-hmm.
That'd be kind of interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Good running game, great defense, kind of like when they won the Super Bowl, isn't it?
And Tom Coughlin's there.
Oh, I didn't know that. That's right, Tom Coughlin is there. So is that a factor? That's a factor. I mean, all these things are a factor. All these conversations are talked about. I mean, not whether it happens, we don't know, but, he still can play quarterback, but he can't carry the team. That's not who he is anymore. Peyton Manning couldn't carry the team toward the end, but he was smart enough to do the right thing with the ball. He got him in the right play. If you have a team that just needs that, Eli's your guy, probably.
And by the way, to answer your question, all the top quarterbacks coming out, again, if Darnold comes out or not, they're more pocket guys. Save for Baker Mayfield. He creates more. Mason Rudolph, big guy. Allen, a big guy in Wyoming. Rosen, big 220. These are all 6'4", 6'5 guys, except for Mayfield. He'd be the one guy. So that's the quarterback coming out this year. These guys are more, they can create some on the run, but they are, for the most part, pocket passers.
But here's the next thing you got to realize. If you go after a young quarterback and you draft him, and you say, we're going to start this guy, what do you look like? Do you look like Cleveland? Okay. Do you look like Chicago? Or do you look like Houston? According to who the guy is, and you don't know that yet. They don't all just walk in there and go by this way. Deshaun Watson, you're the starter now. Oh, last 5 games before he got hurt, they're scoring 35, 40 points a game. Well, Chicago not doing that. Mm-hmm. Cleveland's not doing that. They got a young guy, too. So who's the guy? Andrew Luck inherits a 2-14 team. Okay, what does he do? 11-5, 11-5, 11-5. But they don't all do that. So it's kind of like, okay, we're wishing that, but that might not happen. It might be Jared Goff. Oh, he's a bust after his first. Oh, he's awful. Not so much. He's awful.
That's the question.
He's pretty good.
Giants. Are you willing to start over? Are you
there
willing
you
to say
go.
we're starting over again?
Yeah, you're starting over. You got a defense. 2 years ago, this defense we talked about, wow. This year, obviously not so much. A lot of the same personnel, but they have the parts for a good defense. Offensively, you're going to get Odell back. You get more receivers. You got to work on the running game. I don't think it's completely broken down like the Browns by any sense of the imagination. They have some talent on that team, but you would be starting over with a rookie quarterback.
Will he be as good as Carson Wentz was his first year? Carson Wentz started off 5-2, and then all of a sudden, boop, okay, 7-9. Now all of a sudden, Carson Wentz, last time I checked, he MVP.
Yeah, and a lot of these owners are seeing Dak Prescott come in, do what he's doing, Deshaun Watson come in, and so some of them expected a little more than they should.
Listen, if you guys, and I know you do, remember Eli Manning, when they put him in there in the middle of his rookie year, he looked like he didn't know which end zone his team was trying to go towards. Yep. And he winds up putting together a Hall of Fame career.
That's exactly right.
If you draft a rookie, you're making a deal, basically, with I'm going to be bad for a year or so here.
That's right.
If it doesn't turn out that way, then that's an enormous bonus.
Yes.
But we're willing to live with that for 15 years of Eli Manning, starting every single Sunday, which there is a value in, and giving you well above average quarterback play.
That's exactly right.
And 2 championships.